"Humans," Zisher taunted, his voice dripping with contempt. "The cowards of the stars. You dare call yourselves sentient, yet you clutch peace like a fragile shield. Your treaties, your negotiations, they're nothing but masks for the fear that binds you, weak, pitiful, unworthy even to stand as our enemies." He paused, letting the sneer curl into a chilling smile, as behind him, holograms flickered to life, scenes of destruction and conquest, the Zondorian fleet's ruthless triumphs. Worlds engulfed in flames, entire species erased from existence, each image a testament to their unstoppable power, their cold efficiency. "For too long, we have endured your presence," Zisher's voice thundered with authority. "Now, the hour has come. One cycle, that is all you have. Send us your greatest warriors to face the might of the Zondorian elite. Prove you possess even a shred of honor, or we will reduce Earth to ash. Die, as the cowards we know you to be." With a final, scornful grin, the transmission ended, leaving the human leaders in stunned silence. High above the planet, in Earth's orbital defense station, the atmosphere was suffocating with tension. Generals, diplomats, and advisors exchanged grim looks. The Zondorians had left them with no room for doubt. This was not merely a threat. It was a challenge from an empire undefeated across millennia, an enemy beyond anything humanity had ever faced. At the head of the table, General Kevin Peterson, his weathered face, showing the weight of the moment, broke the silence. His voice, roughened by years of command, was heavy with resolve. "This isn't just a war," he said, eyes fixed ahead. "It's a declaration. They want to crush us before the first shot is fired." Murmurs rippled through the room, whispers of diplomacy, evacuation, or surrender. But for some, surrender was unthinkable. From the shadows, Captain Chris Sutherland, leader of Earth's finest soldiers, Squad Omega, stepped forward. Towering and battle-hardened, he embodied humanity's defiance. His gaze swept across the room, locking with each pair of eyes. "We will not back down," he said, his voice steady, unyielding. "This is what they want, to see us falter, to feed their illusion of superiority. But we are not weak. We fight, or we fall, and I for one am not willing to fall." General Peterson nodded, his expression resolute. "You're right, Captain. We have one option. We strike at their heart. We send a message of our own." All eyes turned to Chris. His team, handpicked from the deadliest soldiers Earth had ever produced, had been preparing for something like this. For years, humanity had known a day like this might come, and Squad Omega had been built for it. Chris's mind flashed to his squad mates. Lieutenant Joseph Curry, his second-in-command, whose tactical brilliance had saved them more times than Chris could count. Sergeant Alan Graves, a hulking brute of a man whose strength was matched only by his loyalty, and Corporal Leo Fredericks, the silent, lethal sniper who rarely missed a shot. Each of them was ready for this, trained for this. Chris spoke again. "We'll take the fight to them. They're expecting fear. We'll give them fury." In the command center, the weight of the moment bore down on everyone like a shroud. No cheers filled the air. No rallying cries echoed to the chambers. Only the stark, unyielding truth of war. General Peterson stood tall, his gaze unwavering. "Captain, you will lead the strike team. Your objective is to infiltrate the Zondorian capital of Gondarth, eliminate their leaders, and sever their chain of command." Chris nodded, but his mind was already racing with the mission ahead. This battle transcended mere survival. It was about proving something essential to the Zondorians and to humanity itself. They weren't just fighting for Earth. They were fighting for their right to exist, to stand as equals in a galaxy that had long dismissed them. As the meeting adjourned, Chris locked eyes with General Peterson. "We will make them regret ever mocking us." A grim smile flickered across Peterson's lips. "I know you will, son." That night, as the squad prepared for deployment, Chris lingered by the observation window, gazing into the vast expanse of stars. Beyond the shroud of darkness lay Gondarth, and beyond that, the Zondorian king who had dared to label humanity as cowards. The journey through the wormhole was brief yet disorienting. For Squad Omega, it was a routine maneuver, but this time the stakes felt heavier. Captain Chris Sutherland clenched his jaw as the vortex expelled them over Gondarth, the heart of the Zondorian Empire. The planet loomed ominously below, bathed in a sickly red glow, its towering obsidian structures clawing at the heavens. The very atmosphere pulsed with a hostile, alien energy. Lieutenant Joseph Curry adjusted the visor on his helmet, his tactical mind already spinning countless scenarios. "We need to move quickly," he said, his voice crisp over the comms. "The planet's sensors will detect our breach shortly." Chris nodded, surveying his team. "We move in silence. No mistakes." Sergeant Alan Graves hefted his plasma rifle, the formidable weapon appearing almost diminutive in his grip. "Let's make them pay," he muttered, his eyes narrowing beneath his helmet. Nearby, Corporal Leo Fredericks was already scanning the terrain through his sniper scope, his gaze sharp and unyielding. They touched down in the shadows of a massive fortress wall, the black stone of Gondarth's architecture looming ominously above them. The fortress was not merely a palace. It was a testament to Zondorian dominance, every jagged angle an imposing spike designed to instill dread in any would-be invaders. Yet Squad Omega remained undeterred. Moving swiftly and quietly, they advanced under the cover of darkness. The air on Gondar felt thick, almost viscous, each breath drawn as if through a murky swamp. Chris led the way, his augmented muscles synchronizing flawlessly with the advanced tactical suit he wore. The team's HUDs flickered with vital information, but their focus remained unwavering on the mission ahead. A faint hum shattered the stillness, and Chris raised a hand. A Zondorian patrol. 5 soldiers, their reptilian forms clad in gleaming armor, slithered around a corner, their dull yellow eyes scanning the area for intruders. They hadn't detected the humans yet. Chris signaled for a silent kill. With practiced precision, they moved like shadows. Joseph, quick and efficient, circled behind one guard and drove a plasma dagger into its spine. Grizzly's massive hand snapped another's neck with a brutal ease. Fredericks, ever the phantom, took out 2 from a distance before their bodies hit the ground. In mere seconds, the patrol lay defeated and the squad pressed on without a sound. As they approached the palace's outer defenses, Curry's voice crackled over the comms, tense yet measured. "We're within range of their security systems. They'll know something's amiss soon." Chris gritted his teeth. They couldn't afford to be detected this early, not before reaching the throne room. "Fredericks, disable it." With a nod, Fredericks swiftly maneuvered his fingers over a control pad. "Done," he whispered, hacking into the Zondorian network and temporarily shutting down the surveillance systems. It bought them precious time, but not much. They pressed on, crossing the desolate courtyard of the palace. The doors loomed ahead, massive and foreboding. Chris signaled for the breach. Grizzly, ever the powerhouse, moved to place a controlled explosive at the door's base. The blast would be quick and silent, designed to grant them entry without alerting the entire Zondorian force. But as the charges detonated, the doors groaned open, unleashing a deafening roar into the night. Zondorian elites, taller and bulkier than the soldiers they had encountered, stormed out, their scales shimmering with a biometallic sheen, energy blades crackling to life. "Contact!" Chris shouted, and the battlefield erupted into chaos. Blades clashed with plasma fire as Squad Omega engaged the elites. Chris weaved through the melee, his speed unmatched, dispatching enemies with calculated strikes. Curry, ever the strategist, coordinated their movements, directing them to exploit openings while Grizzly barreled through the Zondorians with raw power, sending their massive bodies crashing against the walls. Yet the elites were formidable opponents, fighting with the ferocity of cornered beasts. Fredericks, perched atop a ledge, provided cover fire, picking off critical threats with pinpoint accuracy, but for every enemy that fell, 2 more seemed to replace them. Chris's gaze locked onto one of the Zondorian commanders, a towering figure with glowing red eyes and a blade twice the length of any human weapon. The alien lunged, and Chris parried, feeling the weight of the strike reverberate through his arms. This was no ordinary soldier. The commander let out a guttural hiss, mocking Chris in its native tongue. "Coward!" It spat, swinging its blade again, faster this time. But Chris was quicker. With a fluid twist, he evaded the blow and drove his plasma blade deep into the alien's chest. "Not today," he murmured as the commander crumpled to the ground. The palace halls were now littered with bodies, the air thick with the acrid stench of blood and burnt metal. Squad Omega regrouped, panting but still standing. The Zondorian elites lay vanquished, but the mission was far from over. They had breached the fortress, but the real battle awaited them. Beyond the next set of doors lay the throne room, where King Zisher awaited. Chris wiped the blood from his blade and met his team's eyes. "We finished this," he said, his voice low and determined. The squad nodded in unison, their exhaustion giving way to steely resolve. They moved forward, ready to confront the Zondorian king and end this war once and for all. The throne room doors crashed open with a deafening bang, revealing the vast, ominous chamber where King Zisher waited. The room was grand and cold, with towering pillars carved from obsidian and a high ceiling that seemed to swallow all light. At the far end of the hall, King Zisher sat on a throne of alien metal, his golden armor gleaming beneath the dim red glow of Gondartha's dying sun. His eyes, burning with malice, locked onto the approaching humans. Behind him, the shattered remains of his council lay motionless, their bodies crumpled where Squad Omega had torn through them. Chris Sutherland led his team into the chamber, his pulse steady despite the gravity of the moment. This was it, the final confrontation. King Zisher stood, his towering frame casting a long shadow over the room. He was massive, even more imposing than the Zondorian elites they had faced. His crown was a cruel, jagged thing, and his eyes shone with a mixture of hatred and disbelief. "So," Zisher hissed, his voice carrying a venomous edge, "the cowards finally come to die." Chris stepped forward, his gaze never leaving the Zondorian king. "No more speeches. No more mockery. This ends now." Zisher's lip curled in disdain. "You truly believe you, a mere human, can defeat me? I have crushed empires older and stronger than yours. You are nothing." With a guttural roar, Zisher unsheathed his massive energy blade, a weapon pulsating with raw, destructive power. The air around it shimmered with lethal energy, warping the space near it as if the blade itself defied reality. Chris readied his own plasma sword, the smaller, human weapon looking almost insignificant in comparison. But Chris didn't waver. Zisher lunged with terrifying speed, his blade cleaving through the air toward Chris. The human captain sidestepped just in time, the Zondorian's weapon slicing clean through a nearby pillar, shattering it into dust. Chris countered, driving his blade toward Zisher's exposed side, but the king twisted, deflecting the blow with his gauntlet. The two circled each other, their movements quick and lethal. Around them, Squad Omega spread out, engaging the remaining guards that tried to protect their king. Curry and Fredericks moved with lethal efficiency, picking off threats with practiced precision, while Grizzly held the line against the bulk of the Zondorian reinforcements. The duel between Chris and Zisher was fierce, each strike from the alien king threatening to overpower Chris. Zisher's size and strength made him a devastating opponent, but Chris had something the Zondorian king did not: speed and precision. Chris darted in and out of Zisher's reach, slashing at his armor, testing for weaknesses. "You fight well for a human," Zisher sneered, his tone dripping with condescension. "But it will not save you." Chris didn't answer. Instead, he feinted to the left, drawing Zisher's blade in that direction, then spun and drove his plasma sword deep into the alien's abdomen. Zisher let out a bellow of pain, staggering back. His golden armor, once pristine, was now scorched and cracked. "You've already lost," Chris growled, watching the king falter. Zisher roared again, this time more in fury than in pain. He swung wildly, his strikes growing desperate. Chris dodged and ducked, his focus unwavering. With one final movement, he ducked beneath Zisher's guard and slashed upward, severing the alien's weapon arm at the elbow. The king let out a howl of rage and agony, collapsing to his knees, clutching the stump where his arm had once been. Chris stood over him, his chest heaving. Zisher's eyes blazed with hatred, but there was something else in them now, fear. You cannot do this," Zisher gasped, his voice weak and strained. "I am a king. I am invincible." Chris sheathed his blade. "Not anymore." Without another word, he grabbed the fallen king by his leg, dragging the massive alien across the cold floor of his own throne room. The once proud ruler of the Zondorians, now broken and humiliated, groaned in pain, his crown falling to the ground with a hollow clatter. Squad Omega moved to Chris's side, the palace now eerily quiet as the last of the Zondorian soldiers lay dead around them. Grizzly kicked aside the crown, spitting on the floor. "Not so tough now, huh?" As Chris dragged Zisher out into the open courtyard, the remaining Zondorian forces, those too afraid to challenge Squad Omega, watched in stunned silence. Their king, the ruler they had believed to be invincible, was nothing more than a beaten, pathetic figure, dragged through the dirt by the very species he had mocked. "Let them see," Chris muttered, more to himself than to his team. "Let them know what happens when they underestimate us." The Zondorians didn't move. They stood frozen, their once fearsome gazes now filled with disbelief and terror. Zisher's empire had crumbled in a matter of hours, and humanity had proven themselves more than worthy adversaries. Chris let go of the king's leg, leaving Zisher lying in the dirt, gasping and defeated. "It's over," Chris said quietly. "For you, for your empire." As they boarded their extraction ship, Chris glanced back at the ruins of the Zondorian capital, the broken remnants of an empire that had once threatened the entire galaxy. They had done it. Humanity had done it. The ship rose into the sky, leaving the battered world behind. Chris, staring out at the red horizon, felt a grim satisfaction. Humanity had not only survived, they had won.